Welcome to the first session of the third module of our training course on export development under Vietnam New Free Trade Agreements. My name is Loan Lê, and I'm looking forward to taking you through these sessions.
This section will introduce the approach to developing an export strategy for cooperatives. This includes the initial setups, covering the team and institutional setup, the risk and assumptions. This section will emphasize the need to involve stakeholders in strategy development at the cooperative level to leverage support and buy-in from the cooperative members. Before delving into each step, we would like to introduce the overall process for developing an export strategy at the cooperative level. This covers the 4 major steps. Step 1 involves setting up the team to develop the strategy and assigning who will do what. Step 2 covers the diagnostic, or assessment of markets of demand, to understand what the cooperatives can produce and what markets it could target. Once the cooperatives have identified the potential markets to target, the next step is to analyze the market requirements. This step will help the cooperatives determine how to export and what changes are required. Finally, once the cooperatives have all the information about what to produce, who to target, and what needs to change to export, then they can put all these down into the strategy, with some indications of the targets, which could be in time to delivery, outcomes, revenue, as well as the actions to take to reach the set target. Depending on the level of ambition of the export strategy, that is, its objectives and scope, and the existing resources and capacity, the cooperatives can build a team to lead the export strategy development effort. In any case, there should be a representative or delegated persons from the cooperative's management team, such as the director, to export strategy development effort. The participation from the cooperative's management team will ensure the understanding and alignment with the cooperative's long-term development direction, as well as ensure the authority, ownership, and buy-in from the management, who will eventually sign off the strategy. Other team members could be selected from the cooperative administrative functions or from cooperative member households. The team member should preferably have a good understanding of the cooperative's long-term strategic development, operations, and products. Furthermore, relevant knowledge or experience in international trade, such as sales, marketing, branding, foreign language, research abilities, etc., will be an asset. In total, the export strategy development team may comprise the director or a senior member of the management team as the champion, and 3 to 5 representatives can be team members. This team will be charged with the foundation tasks, including collecting information and feedback, supply and demand analysis, and drafting the cooperative's export strategy. After having the export strategy development team, it is essential to map the involved stakeholders early on in the process. This can be done through a stakeholder mapping relevant to the cooperative's export strategy, comprising the formal organizational structure and other related stakeholders. It should be noted that, depending on the scope of the strategy, the stakeholders involved and the roles of each stakeholder will be different. Relevant stakeholders might span different areas and stages of cooperative operations in addition to the official organizational structure of the cooperatives. In this task, the value chain framework for stakeholder mapping, developed by the Food and Agriculture Organization, is helpful in identifying all the relevant stakeholders in the different segments of the value chain, including not only the producers but also all upstream and downstream services providers and supporting agencies. While the core value chain actors, in other words, the formal organizational structure of cooperatives, can provide insights and guidance on the reality of production and challenges, other stakeholders are also critical to supporting the implementation of the activities and realizing the objectives of the export strategy. Understanding the roles that each stakeholder play can help the export strategy development team better reach out and assign responsibilities in accordance with their functions. Going from the top of the cooperative's hierarchy level, the general meeting of the cooperative members, comprising all cooperative members, has the highest decision-making power of the cooperatives. Therefore, the general meeting of the cooperative members is the key stakeholder in adopting the export strategy and allocating resources for the implementation. Second, the board of directors is responsible for cooperative management and, therefore, is crucial in the development and implementation of the export strategy, including the vision, objectives, strategy, and actions. Third, the director, or general director, is responsible for the cooperative's day-to-day activities and is well placed to lead the export strategy development efforts. The fourth group of stakeholders in the cooperative's formal organization structure is the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors is responsible for monitoring and supervising the cooperative's activities and can be placed in the role of reviewing and ensuring the export strategy in accordance with the cooperative's charter and other rules. Finally, cooperative members are part of the general meeting of the cooperative members. The opinions of individual cooperative members should also be considered in the development of the export strategy to ensure the participation and buy-in from all members in the development and implementation of the export strategy. Furthermore, cooperative members are directly involved in the production of the cooperative's products and will be a key node in ensuring the product quality in line with the export requirements. In addition to the stakeholders under the formal organizational structure of the cooperative, other stakeholders are also critical to supporting the implementation of the activities and realizing the objectives of the export strategy. These stakeholders can be mapped based on their linkages with cooperatives on a value chain basis, using the value chain framework stakeholder mapping developed by the Food and Agriculture Organization, as we mentioned earlier. This other stakeholder category may be further divided into 5 subgroups. The first one is the associated cooperatives and households. Associated cooperatives and households are not official members of the cooperative, but they have a mutual collaboration whereby they source production inputs, such as seedlings and fertilizers, from cooperatives and sell products to the cooperative. Similar to cooperative members, associated cooperatives and households are also important in ensuring the product quality is in line with the export requirements. The second subgroup covers the core value chain stakeholders, including the aggregators, processors, and distributors. Aggregators, processors, and distributors are the downstream players of the cooperatives. In many cases, the cooperatives also play the role of aggregators for its members and associated households. With the established relationship, it can provide feedback to the cooperatives on the product quality, the market demands, and any trend in the consumption market. The third subgroup is called the extended value chain stakeholders, which comprises input providers, financial service providers, and non-financial service providers. These are the upstream players and are important in inputs for the cooperatives, being either capital or production-related inputs. Specifically, financial service providers are key in addressing the challenges related to access to export financing mechanisms to ensure the viability of the cooperative's export strategy. The fourth subgroup is trading or intermediary companies. As indicated in a survey conducted in the background for this course, many Vietnamese cooperatives opted for exporting through intermediary trading companies as they generally lack understanding and expertise on the import and export procedures and requirements. In this context, trading and intermediary companies can play the role of the buffer between the cooperatives and foreign buyers to relay information on the market demands and requirements. The last group cover the national and international supporting agencies, such as the several institutes under the Vietnam Cooperative Alliance System and trade promotion centers. These institutions are part of the national enabling environment and are important in addressing the cooperative's challenges related to lack of access to finance, lack of information about export markets, lack of information about import and export procedures, lack of information about export requirements, legal and technical, and lack of human resources capacity. Therefore, cooperatives are encouraged to contact the national and international supporting agencies before, during, and after developing the export strategy to obtain insight and support. We also would like to take this chance to emphasize the importance of inclusive consideration in the cooperative's export strategy. The stakeholder mapping is a helpful step for cooperatives to examine the gender and inclusive aspects of their cooperative's management and operational structures. By adding details on the gender, ethnicity, or specific characteristics of stakeholders involved in the cooperative's production, including but not limited to the management team, heads of the cooperative's members, heads of the associated cooperatives and households, employees, and so on. The cooperatives can identify the specific concerns and challenges faced by these groups in order to build up a strategy that suits their members. The information about the participation of women-led cooperative members and households, and members from the ethnic minority groups will also be helpful for cooperatives when applying for support from international or national agencies, as there are usually budget pockets supporting activities targeting the specific groups. In this context, the Gender-Based Analysis Plus, or GBA Plus, as embraced by the Government of Canada, is a helpful tool to support the development of responsive and inclusive policies. It takes into account various factors, including sex, gender, age, culture, language, education, sexual orientation, faith. The goal is to assess how different women, men, and gender-diverse individuals may experience these policies and initiatives, ensuring that they are tailored to meet diverse needs and anticipate and mitigate any barriers to access or benefit. Therefore, the framework is highly relevant for the cooperative sector. The sector has the diverse participation of female, ethnic minority groups, as well as people from socioeconomically disadvantaged groups. This table summarizes the different stakeholders and their roles in the development and implementation of the cooperative's export strategy, as we discussed earlier. While the ownership and key responsibilities remain within the formal organizational structure of the cooperative, other stakeholders can also provide valuable inputs and feedback to strengthen the viability of the strategy. When we develop an export strategy, or any strategy at all, we should bear in mind the assumptions and risks. The export strategy will depend on a range of premises, or assumptions, to ensure that it can be successfully developed to the needs and conditions of the cooperatives. Additionally, no matter how carefully the cooperatives plan, there will always be some elements of risks in the development and implementation of the export strategy. There are a number of assumptions that we need to take into account in developing an export strategy for cooperatives. The first assumption is that the cooperatives are export-ready or are working toward export readiness. If your cooperatives are not export-ready or are working toward export readiness, you have more homework to do. Second, willingness and commitments among cooperative members and management to export. Without this, the strategy will not be implemented. Third, there is alignment among stakeholders, especially the cooperative members and management team about the strategic objectives and the goals of the export strategy. Fourth, there is cooperation among stakeholders, especially the cooperative members and management team, to engage in exporting and make the necessary changes to the production and operation processes to make it happen. Fifth, there is cooperation among stakeholders, especially the cooperative members and management team, in the development and implementation of the export strategy. Lastly, the cooperatives have the resources or are ready to allocate resources, both in terms of financial and human resources, and either individually or collectively with other cooperatives and institutions, to implement the export strategy. There are also several elements of risks, based on our situation assessment conducted in the background of this project, through both primary and secondary research. The first risk, which is major, concerns limited resources either in terms of time, budget, or capable personnel in the cooperatives to take care of the strategy development and implementation. The second risk is related to insufficient information. This could be the lack of information from either secondary sources or from the stakeholders for the cooperative to identify supply, market demand, market requirements, buyers, competitors, potential political and macroeconomic risks, etc. There is also a related risk of outdated data for strategy formulation, while strategy is forward-looking. Also linked to data issues to inform decision-making during the strategy development is the noise in the data, or data quality. For example, the fluctuations in market demands due to COVID-19 or geopolitical conflict may give incorrect signals about the global market demand. Lastly, there is a risk of low engagement from government agencies or other supporting institutions to share information on policies supporting cooperatives' exports and how to benefit from these policies. It should be noted that these risks might occur during the preparation and development of the strategy. When the cooperatives move to implementation and exports, there might be different risk categories, which we will discuss in the upcoming module. To mitigate these risks or rather challenges, the cooperatives can use diverse, supplementary sources of data, as well as secure support from different sources, including from both national and international institutions. Thank you for joining the course, and we look forward to seeing you in the next session.